Peace, blessings, and elevation. We will bring you inspiring stories, expert insight, and practical tools and information to support you. Types in embracing our authentic selves, we can pave the way for a brighter future for ourselves and our children. Power, heal, and support fathers and men on their journey. I'm your host, Kelly Little, aka the Village King. Welcome to the Father's Haven. All right, peace, blessings, and elevation, and welcome to another episode of the Father's Haven. Today, we are honored and blessed to have my brother, David Cozart, the Chief Visionary Officer for the Commonwealth Center for Fathers and Families, a staple in the Kentucky community, a leader, an advocate, what I consider to be an expert when it comes to integrating systems, policy, fatherhood, and all other things, and minister as well. But let me go ahead and pause for a second and let brother David just step in the room and just tell you a little bit about what he's doing to create real change in Kentucky.
How you doing, brother Little? Glad to be here, man.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, well, let me appreciate you by just initially saying anything you said of me 4 times back to you. Had the chance to bring you up for the summit in 2023 in Kentucky. And you did mention I'm a minister, so I do have some of those charisms, so please forgive me. But if I was a preacher, a pastor, and invited you to preach, the way you preach down there, I tell you, get out of town and don't come back. And I thought you were trying to take my church. Hey, man, you got stellar marks. In fact, you got marks as high or higher than anyone there. So in all seriousness, thank you for what you bring to the table, to the space, and to the movement everywhere your footsteps. I know you are a leader, par excellent, locally, statewide, and nationally in your own right. So thank you, man. Thank you for having me. Hey, wife, a husband of one wife, Nikisha Cozart, who's a leader in her own right. She does some work here with the Carter G. Woodson Academy. I'm obviously biased, but I see it to be a flagship educational program for young men, predominantly African-American men. So it's 6th through 12th grade, and she provides leadership to that program, that academy, and is producing, helping produce some fine young men that are marginalized, as we know. Father of 3, oldest is Zachary, next is Dalen, or next is Destiny, my daughter, and then the youngest is Dalen. And they're part of my journey and part of my calling, part of my mission. And I'm G-daddy to 2, Kalani and Legend, my little granddaughter and me. We're just together the other day and just really enjoying my family. Chief Visionary Officer with the Commonwealth Center for Fathers and Family. Our mission is to propagate fatherhood across the state of Kentucky and beyond. And we're looking at those systemic issues, those systems level issues, policies and procedures that might be counterintuitive to positive family formation, which us in this world automatically and initially would say that fathers are integral to the family. And so we're seeking to do that here in Kentucky. And by extension, we have opportunities to do it in other spaces. We use a collective impact, collaborative model. You'll hear us saying, if you're doing it alone, you're doing it wrong. And that includes intergovernmental agencies, that includes for-profit organizations, that includes the academy, both elementary and high school and post-secondary and post-baccalaureate. We want everybody asking the question, where's the father when they're doing their strategic planning, their policy making, and all that they're doing to make their respective institutions or bodies of work a success. We feel like fatherhood's part of that. It fits everywhere. And so that's what we're doing here in Kentucky.
Look, Dave, you done got me started now. So I want to send it for a second. One, before we go to a little bit of question and answer, on this space, on this podcast, to focus on creating sanctuaries and refuges for men and fathers to be comfortable, to purge, to relax. We know we had to have a blueprint designed by the architect to help us navigate that space. But even when we get in that space, those of us who sit on the at the intersection of preparation and opportunity also understand that, as you alluded to just a few minutes ago, we got to be focusing on policy, procedures, and embedding that so that when people are designing and not co-creating with fathers, how we create spaces for men and fathers to heal, so they make sure that the people who we affirm are able to heal and feel supported. So, saying all that, I really like to ask, what inspired you to start the Commonwealth Center for Fathers and Families?
So I have retrospectively looked back and saw that every element of my life, relationally and vocationally, familially and socially, turned my shoulders to fatherhood. Once in the space, in direct service delivery, I swiftly realized that, well, after a decade or more, I realized that it just was not what was going on at the grassroots direct service delivery level. That wasn't all that was impacting this institution of fatherhood. And so you asked me, what do I do to create the space? I first have to kind of actually speak to not levels in a hierarchical sense, because I never want anyone to believe that because they're doing, one does programmatic things, that they're any less than someone that is doing something that looks like policy and advocacy systemically. I don't want anyone that's having that meeting in a community relations room at a community center of fathers, or someone that's doing a group in the Sunday school room at First Baptist Tulsa, that they're any less than the person that's at the governor's mansion in this body of work. So when I say levels, it's more across a level continuum of care on the journey to rightness and a better human condition, and not the ladder to a better human condition. I believe that in and of itself creates some tension in any movement if it becomes hierarchical instead of a continuum where everyone is on level ground. But the inspiration for CCFF, the simple inspiration was we could create the best running shoes for that track star father, but if we don't write the infrastructure on which they're traversing the track, call it, then they ain't never gonna break the record, right? It's the terrain has got to be fixed, and the surface has to be fixed, just like the competitor. And so I see direct services as outfitting the competitor, and systemic efforts are writing or are making efficient the terrain for them. So that's what inspired me to create CCFF, the Commonwealth Center, which is less direct service. But I believe that a person always must keep their hand on the pulse of their passion, right? And so I bounce back and forth between direct service too. I mean, I'm dangerous when I get in a set of men, because I almost get selfish, because I'm like, man, I need this grassroots family in that mud energy, so I can remember why God has put me in this place for policy and other things impact. And so, man, I think it's very important that for those that are interfacing with men. I think hospitality is huge, Brother Little. Um, so if I walk up to a place, I love seeing something that says Father's Haven, Center for Fathers, Fatherhood Initiative, dads and donuts, dads and dudes. You know, there's this debate. Can we call it fatherhood? Why would we do that? Well, that's part of hospitality. When I get the flyer, oh, this is for me. So I'm in the school of thought that, yeah, I know we have different family constellations out there now. And I know the family has evolved in many ways, but I'm going to name that father. And I don't think you're doing violence by doing that, because you're already creating a hospitable space by that. And then when you're with that individual, that man, very important for you to have it laid out in such a way that it looks like that you're seeking to serve those men. You know, anyone under that I work alongside, hey man, line the sandwiches up. Just don't throw pizza boxes out there. Put the chips in line, man. You know, put a little flyer on the table. I don't care if it's bologna and cheese. Put a marker, say this is bologna and cheese. This is ham and cheese. This is turkey and cheese. These are Fritos. These are Ruffles. You know, let them say, oh, somebody has done a little work for me. You know, and even just that bit of hospitality. Now, you said creating a space where men can be genuine and are welcome. It's that hospitality. Let me tell you what it's not. It's not confronting things. You know what I'm saying? Because once you've done that and created that space, having developed relationship with you, I'm now going to speak to some things in a different way that I believe you'll receive. And if I got to move in a little bit closer to you, with respect and with regard, and speak to something tough that I note, then we're now able to do that, because you created a space of authenticity and genuineness. And people think, you know, brothers, whether black, white, Latinx, or whatever, don't want you confronting things. Not so. They want you doing it respectfully. And you know, you know when that vibe is in the air. But I think it all first starts with love, hospitality with one another, creating that authentic space.
I love the way you summed that up, because essentially what you just shared, that's the foundational space of any successful, not just organization, but relationship, right? That hospitality creates a peace and a willingness for people to say, you know what, Brother David, as a leader, as a systems engineer, you can check me at any time when I fall out of line to hold me accountable. Because at the end of the day, most men only want to do what's best for their children, and they want to be respected. You know what I mean? So, like, when we have this conversation, when we had this dialogue, people tend to shift it like, okay, just because I'm creating this place of peace, I'm not going to hold people accountable. And that was one of the questions I was going to ask, and you hammered it right there. Like, you know, I'm going to lean in, and we're going to have conversations, because at the end of the day, most men are really looking for that guidance that maybe they didn't get in terms of going down their journey of fatherhood, and so offering that level sets the room.
Very important, not just in the work, but it's important as we project the work to others that are looking up on it with encouragement or with discouragement. And we know that there are some of the latter. And the latter that are looking on it to discourage the work would say, oh, this is a hug a thug program. You know, if they can't feed them, they shouldn't breed them. That's a Kentuckyism right there. You know, can't feed them, don't breed them. You know, you're a man, pull yourself up. And they say, you creating these programs for men, and you know, and y'all soft on them, and tell them, no, it really ain't soft if you're in the space. Just because we encourage publicly and we redirect privately, you don't know what's going on inside baseball. And that authentic redirection, and you called it place of peace, there is confrontation in peaceful places, right? And then, so our private setting is our groups, there are cohorts, there are direct service, right? And then sometimes even in the group, I might have to say, hey, Kelly, let me holler at you after everybody leave, you know? And you're a little disengaged tonight. Plus, I smell a little oil on your breath. You know, is everything okay? But folks don't see that. They don't have to. They don't need to. But fact of the matter is, it is a space that we're seeking to build and buttress men, and that's sometimes part of it.
You know, when you went down that path and talking about the having the confrontation, and I don't think I know. Frederick Douglass said there can be no progress without a struggle. So in order for my elevation, I got to go and lean into my uncomfortableness so that I can get to that space where it's natural for me. And I need somebody who may spoken to 200 men or 2,000 men. And so, you know, a little bit more about some things that can help me to become a better man. But more importantly, how do I not only be that positive man, but how can I take feedback and not think of it as just like constructive criticism? And for those
Mm-hmm.
who are on the outside, who may make assumptions around what happens internally from what they see externally, you know what I mean? That's why these kids are having problems today because they watch TikTok and they believe something that may not be true. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
So when we get to that and understanding that every person journey is different. And so how Brother David may have to confront me may be different based on what's going to inspire me, right? And that goes right back to that foundational moment of building relationship. You know, I can't correct nobody if I don't have a relationship with you because I don't know what you've been through. And I've watched you and I've seen the product of some of the work that you've done in Kentucky and how people respect you in a way that I'm willing to receive pretty much anything you say. I'm probably going to walk through a brick wall because not only is Brother David so eloquently spoken, but they know that you care about them. And that's huge. Um, how do you leverage that to create those uh, interactive but interconnected spaces for community partners, stakeholders, and really elevating fathers' voices in spaces so that it's not just the professional's point of view, but there's this interconnected system that's moving all together.
yeah. So I answered a part of that earlier when I talked about liking the equity of a continuum of care
Mhm.
versus the hierarchical perception of levels of care. So that's important um, because no one has to feel subjugated. That authority is shared. That's why I said take a systems leadership approach. I mean, everybody's a leader of something, and in some way, and many people excel at their leadership in the venue that they're exercising that skill. But I think also too is a mutual or uh, a universal goal, which is one of my facilitators, Ebony O'Ray, got me on this term a couple of years ago. Team Little, and I'm not talking about Kelly. We're talking about the babies. We're talking about the next generation. We're talking about the fruit from whose trees are trees whose fruit we may never eat, and under whose shade we may never sit. So you focus on that. And that is a self-leveling environment, should be, unless someone's got an antisocial, narcissistic personality. When we go back to we're working for the children, that should bring us all down to a level. And so it's what I call the collective objective. And so if we all have the collective objective genuinely, and creating a space that screams that, right? If you're talking about things and matters of the heart, that can include money, that can include policy, that can include partnerships, that can include grant writing, that can include elections and politics. If we have a collective objective, it'll cut through all of that and keep us squarely focused on the destination. And so I think that runs across the continuum of systems. We're always talking about cross-sector partnerships because fatherhood is applicable to the academy, to the healthcare system, to the educational system, certainly the human services system. I throw in for-profit. You know, there's always going to be that Wu-Tang factor, that cream factor, right? Cash rule everything around me. Cream get the money.
Dollar bill.
I was waiting on you, man. I was waiting on you. I'm like, come on now, you know your part. Everybody knows their role when that anthem sang, don't they?
Yes, sir.
So it comes back to that, which is often the sticking point. But even when you get to the fiscal piece, if you start talking about how fatherhood engagement reduces parental stress and reduces poverty and allows folks to pour back into the economy. And hey, Toyota or Tesla manufacturer, do you know your employees will miss less work if they have a strong family network? Baby wake up throwing up with diarrhea, single moms got to either call in Toyota or have a network to be able to call and take care of this baby. And what if the paternal side of that tree had not been trimmed like it so often is?
Right.
That's a whole nother option, right? And so that's the economic impact. So those things cut across and build that that collective impact and that collaborative spirit.
So I love it because, like you said earlier, you talked about the continuum as opposed to a hierarchy. And we live in a society where the focus is more hierarchical. But at the end of the day, when we look at all of the issues that plague our communities, there's a direct correlation to fatherhood. And you know, I don't say the word fatherlessness because every young person has a father. Now, they may not be involved. The question is, were they invited to the table? One. Number two, the other question is, did we even look for them, which you talked about earlier, and making sure when we engage with these community partners that we understand that we do a search. Is this a viable option? And even if the expectation isn't for that child to maybe go in a home with them, if you pay attention to stories when men leave prison and never have known their father, how they break down when they first meet their father, we have a responsibility, if nothing more than to reduce infant mortality, obesity, domestic violence, all those different indicators, and the social determinant of health, all exclusively speak to the importance of even the research and data talk about when fathers hold a child chest to chest, it's very similar, if not more important than when the mom do it. Nobody wants to talk about that data and that research. Not saying mom not important, it's saying that children need both parents. And so as you went to that, and then you just left, was it a Head Start?
Healthy Start. Yep.
Yep, Healthy Start. So people don't even tend to associate that. But if you're an OG, you know that fatherhood, right? Its origins are connected to those places. So
Absolutely,
talk a little bit
absolutely.
about why you was up there and some of the things as it related to fatherhood that you would consider to be a healthy methodology for fatherhood programs to employ.
Yeah, yeah. I was in New Orleans, right? And you know that I ran into some of our colleagues and down there, some stalwarts in the field, Kenny Braswell and Avis
Shout
Files
out
was down there
KB.
from Ohio. And so, it started yeah, yeah. Had to make you a little jealous. We went and got us a stick down there, a little cigar bar right down the street in the heart of New Orleans. So that why I was there, it was in fact part of was it because of the organization, Healthy Start. Healthy Starts and Head Starts, some folks get those confused, a similar vein. However, both of them have resources and mandated but funded mandates to do fatherhood work. They have for a decade or more, right? But we're not seeing it happen. And so it's good to see that happen. But also to go, if you're really about this work, it is not a work about you and you alone or Kentucky and Kentucky alone. What state you serving in? I know several, but primarily where, Kelly?
Primarily North Carolina.
Okay. Uh-huh. But you spent some time uptown, didn't you? Like, and
Born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
so yeah, yeah. So that's that's a paradox in your language still. You still got because y'all say up there no matter where you're going. You know what but New Orleans is down there. And some dialects say over there. While you was over there, what did you you know? But that I was down there because there were people that I knew had something that I could learn from. And when these spaces are being gathered, I'm always going to glean and gather and sharpen and improve and enhance based on what others may be doing well. They do a phenomenal job of elevating lived experience fathers down there. One of my brightest moments was I literally saw a young father walking around. He was on the top floor in a rotating bar for a reception, nice reception, and he literally looked like a deer in headlights. I said, "Hey, young brother, how you doing?" "Man, just can't even believe I'm up in here, you know." I said, "Why not? Why not you?" You know what I'm saying? Why not you be a next leader in this? And it was just,
Mhm.
and having those experiences are invaluable. Um, there were national people there that were talking about national trends. We got to be able to read the tea leaves, right? We got to know the directions it's going, and we have to be willing to partner with one another and not work against one another. Infighting in this work and in certain cultures, you would know, has been used as a mighty weapon. Um, Full transparency. You said that don't use fatherlessness. There's a couple of things I've been saying for 2 decades. There's no fatherless child. Let's take out baby mama and baby daddy. Sometimes I'll be around brothers like you and like Brother Jones or Brother Johnson. And I don't know who said that first. I don't know if it was Charles Ballard 3 decades ago. I don't know if it was Brother Johnson 2.5 decades ago. I don't know if it was Kenny Braswell 2 decades ago, Patrick Patterson, Kelly Little. I don't know who said that first. In my mind, I did. And so when I,
That's the bourbon.
you know, but hey, but that's a trick. You know what I'm saying? That's a trick. If I got
Mhm.
stuck on that, oh, that was, and the collaboration in the community and the work is as important as the strategy. And so I go down there to stay in the mix with those that are passionate and doing the work and have no emerging and promising practices, and that I can lock arms with. It's going to take. This is what was it? Marvel's the Infinity War. This is going to take all of us, bro. We're
Yes,
fighting
yes,
Thanos. You know what I'm saying?
yes. Hey,
Yeah.
look, and what really, as you were naming some of the names, in my mind, I'm thinking Joe Jones. I can't forget David Miller, but
Yeah.
you you hit my sister, Avis Files, doing
Yeah.
amazing work in
Ohio.
Ohio. Yeah, we went through the Practitioners Leadership Institute together, and to see, because we often hear, women can't, they don't have a space in this fatherhood space, right? When you got a ability to connect, and see, that's the thing that I will say about you, brother David. Your personality is very much like a magnet, in that you have the ability to draw people in, connect with people. People feel comfortable with you in like 2 minutes, right? It's
Mm.
before you even throw a joke out there.
And then uncomfortable at 4. Comfortable at 2, gone at 5.
Look, boy, you a mess. Um, let's kind of orient ourselves to how those connections that you establish with people. I don't even want to talk about, get in depth with like the relationship with Tennessee. You're always looking for different options to be able to expand this work, and not just for the Commonwealth Center for Fathers and Families, but for fathers and families universally. That is something that you don't teach. That comes with experience. Like when we was laughing earlier, you was like, you maybe 15 years ago would have approached something real differently, right? And
Oh yeah.
so
Oh
our
yeah.
jobs as leaders is to identify how we continue to elevate this work, optimize this work, and build the next generation of trailblazers moving forward. And I've watched how you interact and engage with people, and that's paramount to us being able to do the work in a way that's going to ensure that we're not running a sprint. This is a relay.
Yeah.
And so in the relay, how do we pass integral lessons for 7 generations into the future by reaching back?
Um, so to the spirit of what you call magnetism, that's honorable. My mom and my daddy are smiling. I'm a rural, predominantly white, I want to speak to that, Kentucky County fellow with some pretty simple principles. Uh, my mama, Eve, Charles and Eva, taught me to treat folk right. And that if nothing else stuck, that stuck for 95% of the instances in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, I just feel like that if you're honest with an individual, you don't have to retrack anything, right? There's no fixing that has to be done now or later. We also know, and it has been said by many of our leaders in various ways. You've heard it said, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. That was our brother Martin. We've also heard it said, like, ain't none of us free until all of us are free. We've heard it said in that way. So that collaboration and that comes easy because I truly know that I am in and of myself nothing, and it is the sum of the whole that makes it possible for us to succeed in any way. And as such, or by extension, you got to know it's not just you that can do it now, and it certainly ain't you that can do it after you're dead and after you're long in the tooth. Uh, there was a very prophetic brother um, from the islands, Bohemian, I believe, Miles Monroe. He passed a couple years ago. I think we may have talked about him as an inspiration to both of us before. And one of the most shaking things I heard him say, he says, I had this dream and I walk up to the casket and it's me. And I'm laying in the casket and I had the baton in my hand. You know, and I remember with that thick, rich accent, he said, the baton. He said, I do not want to die with the baton in my hand. And I'm like, wow, what an image. And how many of our leaders, particularly in certain cultures, how many of our leaders die with the baton in their hand, right?
Right.
And I embellish it to say they die with the baton in their hand in the casket, and it's lined with the liner of the casket are masterful blueprints and plans and phone numbers and Rolodexes of resources that needed to be passed on for someone to carry that baton forward. And oh, how I don't want to be found guilty of that when I'm collected, right? And so the other thing about the collaboration piece that I want to say and the ability to form bonds, if you listen to some of the cultural colloquialisms and that I've been using, you and I've been exchanging, it would lead one to believe we're talking only of, you know, fathers that would be endeared by those colloquialisms or fathers of color. We've got to dispel that myth that Black fathers are the only ones that need help. That's actually been a barrier for some. It's like, okay, this is fatherhood stuff all about Black fathers. Well, no, but the stats that will be published would paint the picture or the narrative that it's Black fathers that are absent the most. There is emerging information that says quite the antithesis of that, and there are skewed or there are biased research approaches that produce skewed analysis that say that, but we're now learning that not so. And so this ability or this, not it's not an ability, Kelly, I don't think. I think it just comes out of my desire, a desire to build community. And as such, we've got to be able to cross over cultures and races. I'm in Kentucky. We're 14% African American here. There's more poverty among my predominantly white Eastern Kentucky Appalachian Mountain brothers. I'm doing the work a disservice. I'm doing violence to the work if I don't create an atmosphere that a white father, a white practitioner, a white woman, a white politician, a white legislature does not feel comfortable in. Or, well, I don't care about being comfortable, to be honest, that can be effective in.
Right.
Because this work comes with discomfort, going back to the whole confrontation piece, right? So comfort is nice to have, but it's not a perpetual condition if you're trying to change things. And so I believe fatherhood is a venue for so much to happen, and we've seen it, Kelly. For a little, you've seen it. There are health initiatives that happen within fatherhood, you know, for men. There are economic development things that happen in the fatherhood sphere. And I strongly believe that there is a racial reconciliation piece that's just about to explode. And it comes out of, or a unity piece, and I believe it comes out of, I believe it's inextricably tied to this element of fatherhood. So you talked about the next, all of these things must be accentuated when we pass that baton to the next.
Right. I love it. And even down to the conversation of, you said something probably about 30 minutes ago, which as men, in many places, most of us have been trained to think that we get to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, right? And you was like, nah, it don't happen like that. And I don't know how many times I had to reorient people oh, they just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. We need to focus on getting the money for the babies. So you're saying to me that if I get money for children, we don't come from a, let me back up a second. Young people don't care about money until they're conditioned to believe that money is where the value at. Young people need more than being present, they need presence. And I don't mean presents and toys. I mean, they need your full attention, your full observation, your full commitment, and your full accountability to them. Because when we don't give them that and we give them all the things that are tied to materialistic things, they in the inside rock. And so just sitting with that analogy and listening to when you made that statement, right? In regards to no one really does that. The work that you're doing, what is some short-term goals for the Commonwealth Center for Fathers and Families, and that visionary work that you're doing to make sure that you help men and fathers across cultures, across ethnicities, across age differences, be able to transformatively get to a space where there's peace, they understand balance, boundaries, and taking care of themselves.
Yes. Short-term goals are, so we're a relatively young organization. We actually, while I've been doing the work at some level or in some way, let me say, for 3 decades, it's only been since November of 2021 we got our IRS, 501c3 status as CCFF. It was in February of 22 that we established, got the bricks and mortar, and had our own staff. And so we're all of 2 years old as of last month in earnest. But we've been doing the work. So first thing is get strong foundation right here of staff and partnership and network and funding and all the things you need for sustainability. And so we're putting on, if we were using the airplane analogy, we all know I'm putting the mask on CCFF right there. Mm-hmm. After CCFF securely has its mask on, we're going to put the mask on Kentucky. That looks like Kentucky having its mask on, looks like, outposts that are established across the state that are providing direct services to fathers and men and families across this state of 120 counties. So we may have anywhere from 5 to 9 outposts across this state that are functioning and serving in the way they need to serve for their geographic area. And we have a legislature and the Cabinet for Health and Family Services that has adopted and internalized and standardized fatherhood as a protective factor, a social determinant, and an element or component that they're going to consider with every step they take, just like children or mothers or economy or eco-friendliness or whatever. All those things that are kind of standardized that they think one should think about as they're building things. So once Kentucky has its mask on, I want to go where we want to be at what long term. So I gave you short term and intermediate. Long term, we want to have developed a rubric or a modality that anyone can adopt and lay in their space, and do it to scale, right? So we function in a way that we have strategies that a rural county or an urban setting, if you know a couple of the right agents and have a person of passion, you can do some fatherhood work cost effectively, certainly more cost effectively than our intergovernmental agencies and offices can do. And so that's the vision for CCFF.
Love it, love it, love it. Look, I want to say this. Although, you know what I mean, Brother David, you the Commonwealth Center for Fathers and Family, but brother, indeed, we are connected. So you part of the Father's Haven too. And you know what I mean, in this space, we believe in reimagining a brotherhood as a multi-generational community of fathers and a haven where men can model, manifest the world we are building as providers, as protectors, as nurturers, as educators, as disruptors of anything that's not supportive of our representation, and more importantly, as that person who refuses to have the baton when
Mm,
we're getting ready to transition in another way.
mm, right.
So, man, I appreciate you for coming in and blessing us on this episode. And I want you to give us one story where you've created or have seen that sanctuary for men and that light bulb go on for a father uh, and your many years of experience in working in this field.
Yeah, that's crazy. Um, any story, that's wild. I can tell the brother that transformed his life in a jail cell, literally, in a
Yes.
fatherhood. I in a fatherhood group. I could tell the one about the brother that in a prison cell cried when I gave him a certificate and said, "This is the first thing I have completed in my life. I'm gonna send it to my children." I could tell the one about the brother at the summit that you've spoken at when we podcasted or we telecasted into the jails.
Tell that one.
Yeah, so we do the summit, and fortunately or unfortunately, but realistically, fatherhood is inextricably tied with reentry and recovery now. But so we are certain to when we do our summit, we've got a DOC, the Department of Corrections track, and we pipe into corrections facilities, jails, and state and federal facilities here in Kentucky. And it was in 2021 or 2022 that showed up at the 2022 and 2023. You were there at
Yep,
23.
yep.
So it's happened each year. A father comes in and said, "Hey, I was watching this summit last year from my cell." And he came up and said, I told myself I'm going to be at that summit next year. That's happened twice. And so a gentleman that was in the cell watching this, and I mean, a lot of work when I almost said, man, we're doing all this to try to zoom into these jails. I don't know if they're listening. We can't see them all the time. I don't know if we're going to keep this track. But brother, when things like that happen, and so one brother did that, and he ended up on stage the next year on a panel, joined our KY Dads, reunified with his family. And so that's one at the CCFF level. You've got stories, man, of the work that you've done. You've been building strong men. I appreciate the opportunity to tell one of mine, but I want to appreciate you and the many others out there that are doing things that are on scales much larger than mine. And I count it a privilege to be with strong men that are building strong men. And I close with this, man. There's a sacred writing because I know we have different strains that work this, but I believe we have a collective objective. There's one sacred writing that says, "No one can take a strong man's house unless they first break in and bind the strong man." you know, and I just enjoy being able to lock arms with strong men that are helping build and buttress strong men.
Yo, y'all heard it. Pure fire. You heard the vocabulary. You heard the
Come on, man.
pastor and master motivator. But this is a testament to what happens when brothers understand their role to be interconnected, to be interlocked, to be in conversation, not only when the camera's on, but when the cameras are off, like this is my guy. And our work gets to elevate because of minds like his. We shouted out Patrick Patterson, James Worthy, David Miller, Kenny Braswell, Jeff Johnson.
The ladies in the field, Avis, Patricia John, right?
Yep. Look, and say, hey, I'm glad you said it because I was gonna make sure I had to get Sister Avis in there because she'd have got me. But this is what it's about. It's about not just talking the work, but doing the work and celebrating all those whose shoulders bear the brunt of opportunities for so many people across so many communities. And it's more of them who we have to grab and be able to help navigate so that they can take these batons and continue to move the work forward. So once again, we've had another great episode with an amazing leader. Let's continue to do the work. Let's continue to lock arms. And until next time, we will see you. Peace, blessings, and elevation. We will bring you inspiring stories, expert insight, and practical tools and information to support you types in embracing our authentic selves. We can pave the way for a brighter future for ourselves and our children. Power, heal, and support fathers and men on their journey. I'm your host, Kelly Little, aka the Village King. Welcome to the Father's Haven.